Hey everybody, it's Benji here.
And Philip J. Fry.
We are the
Two Beans.
Two Beans. And we are, this is our first episode of our podcast. This is going to be...
First official episode.
First official episode, yeah. The 2020 Worldview Part 1. Or 2020 Part 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this one, we're just going to break down a few things that happened this year and just get some hot takes on it.
Yeah, there's some, we're going to do our best not to be political, but at the same time, that's really hard, so...
Yeah.
Our first episode, gonna get a little spicy.
Yeah. There's a little bit of spice.
Yeah, so we're gonna start off, like you should start off anytime you talk about 2020, and anytime we start our podcast, we're gonna take a shot. I gotta open my...
I gotta switch my hand.
Got it.
Maybe I'll bring it like this.
I think I went under last time and it made me look weird. Alright, well, there we go. Hey.
Oh, tangerine this time.
Tangerellos. Alright, so we're gonna...
I'm gonna knock him over every time.
I do hope you guys like our background. You've got a lot of different things. You have Godzilla, blah, 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 everybody. So we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah.
Alright, so first thing on the docket. January. First thing of the new year, starting 2020 off right with the Iran possible war.
Yeah. That was a really... I was about to say a fun thing. Sometimes I'm not
That
good
was
at
just
words.
so fun.
Yeah,
that we
I had
almost,
a great time.
You know, we just almost drafted, you know.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on? I don't know.
So I'll rephrase that. That was a really interesting way to wake up on January 1st.
Yeah. That was, you know, to be honest, so many other things have happened that this one was like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
when you brought it up, I'm like, oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I literally almost forgot that happened.
We have this 2020 has been such a horrible year that we forgot that we almost went to war with another country.
Yeah.
But we didn't, so that's probably why we don't remember it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, like...
Could you imagine if we went to war and the pandemic?
Well, we wouldn't be at war. Nobody would, because all of the fighting would just be dead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we gotta check your temperature before you go out to fight.
Yeah, that's a really dark thought. I'm glad that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, I mean, our soldiers do enough, you know, let alone just...
Oh, yeah.
You know, trying not to die from a pandemic.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it was weird. Of course, I woke up a little hungover.
like we always do.
Yeah, and slept in. So, and I'm used to getting up early most of the time just because I usually wake up early for work. So sleeping in for me, I already always feel like, oh, what day is it? What's going on? So I woke up at probably like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And I just started seeing memes about it, about going to war. And I was like, what happened? And Jenna was like, oh, just, you know, some trash talking and stuff between, you know, the leaders of, you know, because our country and Iran. And
if our president is anything, he's a trash talker.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't, you know, I brought this up the first time we recorded this, but he's kind of one of the first presidents that didn't have, like, a war.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because he's probably one of the most volatile presidents we've ever had.
Absolutely, yeah. It was, I was genuinely surprised that, like, all of his trash talking on Twitter has never resulted in any actual, like,
action
conflict. Yeah, because, I mean, Russia and North Korea and China, like...
To be fair, he kind of sucks up to communists and then also bashes them. It's like when he's with them, he sucks up to them, and then when he's on Twitter, he bashes them.
He sends such weird mixed messages.
Mm-hmm. He's one of those toxic people that you don't really know how to
Welcome
feel
to us
about
not being political.
This has nothing to do with his policies.
Yeah, this is just him as a person.
Which I think we all know maybe isn't the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be pretty unaware to not realize that he's, at the very least, abnormal.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But anyway, so next thing, the fires. So there's we have 3 different kind of fires. The first one will be the Australian fires. Then you have the fires in the Amazon, which was like, oh, we're going to run, you know, the Amazon burns. That's a huge percentage of our
The lungs of the world.
Yeah, the lungs of the world. And then there's our fires.
Yeah.
So so fires are actually like a good thing for the environment, but not right now for us because our environment is so unhealthy.
Yeah.
Like the trees,
when it's a naturally occurring thing, and
not even so much naturally, like because controlled burns are good. The problem, like obviously Amazon, that was man-made fires. I think we kind of know that.
Yeah.
That spread out of hand. But like trees can live through fires. It's not forest fires get rid of all the brush, allow new things to grow, but the problem is that the trees aren't living through the fires now because it's just all the drought that's been happening. Everything's really dry. And it's kind of all going back to climate change.
Yeah, and once they get started, they get out of control real fast.
Yeah, so controlled burns aren't so controlled anymore. And it's kind of crazy. Like, it's just, I remember the ones in Colorado where the smoke was coming over here, and it was just kind of like...
Yeah, it was definitely surreal to see impacts like that here, because obviously, we're here in Kansas. Fires really... Yeah, not a thing here. I mean, there is a lot of like control burns, that you see, but since we don't have like lots of like big tree areas and stuff, like our fires never get too out of hand or anything.
It's kind of like a weird. So like the Midwest is kind of known for not really like taking themselves out of their own life, but having that part of that life coming over here with the smoke and all that, and like really kind of experience very mild experiences with the fires.
Yeah,
we're not relocating or anything. It was kind of like, oh god, this is
crazy. It was definitely different and pretty surreal to see that. I know we're skipping ahead a little bit to talk about that, but it was weird going outside and being able to look directly at the sun and it didn't burn out your eyes because there was so much like haze and smoke in the air. It was one of those things where, I mean, it's awful because, lots of wildlife is dying and it's hurting the environment. But there was a little bit of like just kind of awe because you just see nature up in your face like that.
Yeah, we're so used, especially from like I grew up in the country, but we're city folks, so like we're not used to nature saying, "Hey."
Yeah, welcome to what happens when you don't take care of us.
Yeah. So hey, maybe it was a good reminder for a lot of people.
Yeah.
All right, next thing. What do you got?
Well, I think we should probably just jump straight into the pandemic because the year kind of seemed a little bit normal after that because it was weird. The war with Iran and the fires seemed like such huge things, but kind of, I mean, by February, I think most people kind of already forgot about it, or they were just joking about it, being like, "Oh man, it seemed like that was so long ago that we almost went to war." And
2020 kind of dragged on for a couple of years, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. So February was like a pretty normal year. I mean, we had obviously been hearing about the coronavirus, but it was mostly in the other side of the world. Yeah. And I guess probably just...
Which is kind of how, like, a lot of the sickness things come is, like, you hear about them from other countries, you're like, oh, well, that might hit, we've done such a good job of taking care of them.
Yeah.
Before that, it was like, oh, it'll be fine. We kind of got spoiled.
Yeah, so it was definitely started to get a little scary kind of towards the end of February and early March, because that's when we really started seeing cases pop up in the U.S., but... as he was saying, any other time that we've had like some sort of like threat of an epidemic or pandemic or anything like that, it usually is taken care of before it gets here. And when it gets here, normally we have like pretty good like health services that will cut it off, stop the spread, and you might have anywhere between 10 to 20 people that might have been infected. They usually recover, and that's it. But so it definitely by the beginning of March was starting to set in a little bit. I mean, it didn't ever seem like completely real until about mid-March when the actual lockdown went on. But you could smell something in the air, not literally, but like you knew something different was happening, and I don't think anyone really knew how to prepare for it.
Yeah, because I was traveling for work. I was in Savannah, Georgia, when the pandemic, like all the lockdowns started happening, and it was like, what are we gonna do? what's happening in our job was like, we haven't really thought about that yet.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, we better get working on it. And, we ended up canceled. So two out of the four of us had flights. They canceled those flights. And all four of us packed all of our crap up when we were done, which was like 2 weeks into the lockdowns. And then we drove all the way back from Savannah to Wichita, Kansas, which is a 18-hour drive.
God, that sucks.
We took shifts on all four of us. We left at 4 a.m., got back at 9 p.m.
Dang, you guys did it all in one day?
All in one day because we couldn't stay anywhere.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. I think everyone deserves just a teensy bit of grace because this virus is just so different than anything we've quite dealt with before. Well, so I think I understand why in the beginning, both citizens and for the most part, right, both citizens and leaders either didn't quite take it seriously or they just they kind of had that sense of, oh well, we'll handle it, we'll take care of it, and before you know it, because of the fact that you can spread it so easily without symptoms, sometimes you'll have delayed symptoms, all these factors that went into it.
We had a lack of tests.
Yeah, we didn't have enough tests. Like, we were completely unprepared for it. Some of it definitely was preventable, and some of it was just because it's so different than anything we've dealt with.
Before we did, I was like, I remember saying to a guy, I was like, if this is like the flu, then let's just all get it and move on.
Yeah.
It's not like the flu.
Right, I mean, that was a huge misconception at the beginning. Some of it because people just don't know how to do their research, but also at the same time, there just wasn't a ton of good, verifiable research on this for so long.
I mean, the beauty of science is you're just able to change your opinion, based off new information. That's why so many things are theories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of look at science, especially when this virus thing was happening, that when they were changing when they were changing how to go about this, how to combat this, and they were explaining their information, I was like, okay, I think this is the number one that makes it real.
Yeah.
And it means that they're trying, because science, you're supposed to, basically you say, hey, this is what it is, and then you spend your whole entire time disproving that, and then you move on and disprove it. So the fact that we were just learning, we were in that process and learning about this thing as it was happening, as it was hitting us, was just, it's frightening because you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, you think back to the beginning of this, and there wasn't a lot of people saying that wearing masks were going to help or anything. So
yeah,
that's another reason why I think there's still a lot of people who are skeptical about masks, because I mean, in the beginning, even Dr. Fauci was saying a mask isn't really going to do anything, it's not going to help anybody.
That was when we were like, it's contact spread, I think. It can live on surfaces for 7 days, stuff like that, and obviously that tune changed a lot.
Yeah, we found out pretty much the exact opposite, that it's almost entirely spread just through respiratory stuff, and that's why the masks do help, because it blocks it. A quick little bit of science that I learned about this recently.
Tell us your knowledge.
I'll do my best, because I'm not going to explain this.
Ruin everything that you learned.
I remember seeing a meme at the beginning of all of this talking about it was obviously an anti-mask meme and everything, but saying well, pants can't hold a fart in because you can obviously smell it, and if you're smelling something, it means you're getting particles in your nose. So it's not
fart particles are bigger than.
Yeah, and so one of the videos I watched about this addressed that, and technically the molecules of the coronavirus are smaller, but since they typically live in your mouth and your nose, they don't come out dry just as the particles themselves. They live in the mucus inside of your mouth, and so even if you're just wearing a basic cloth mask, that stops about 90% of that stuff getting out.
Mainly made it where it was no, you're actually blocking stuff leaving your mouth and going. Then the other person having their mask is now also, it's like a two filter system.
And they said, if your mask is getting hot and it feels really moist, that's a good thing, because that's stopping that stuff from getting
Yeah.
out through the mask. So that's why, you can smell a fart, but farts aren't coming out in like
They're not.
mucousy globs. I mean, you hope they aren't. Sometimes I guess they are. But
You might want to see a doctor for something more than COVID-19.
yeah, at the very least, head to the bathroom like ASAP.
Hey doctor, I farted and
A little mucus bubble.
it sounded like a sneeze.
Oh, that sounds great.
Okay, so all right. I was working on the Spirit Ventilator project, which I say Spirit Ventilator. So there's a big thing to get ventilators for everybody. U.S. government and then a lot of like foreign countries were doing it. We have no labs that build ventilators in the United States. A lot of people outsource that job.
Yeah.
Spirit, which is a aviation company down here, was laying off a bunch of people because not only did the COVID tank stuff, Boeing got in trouble. So
Yeah.
not to get too much into that, but it's another 2020 thing. But anyway, so Spirit, to save people's jobs, partnered up with this company called Viair to create ventilators for people. And then they hired my company out, so they basically sent me and like 3 other guys to go to this ventilator project to help basically build this lab up. And ambient noises, Ladybug, she didn't like it because I was working 12 to 14-hour days.
Dang.
For 5 months, and I wore a mask the whole entire time. My ears hurt. I broke out all on my face.
Yeah, it's rough.
And it was rough. You had to wear your mask all the time, or else you got kicked out. You'd get 3 kicked out, and then you would just get fired. People were still trying to live their everyday lives, and I think for the most part, like, you still kind of can. Like, obviously, no big gatherings.
Yeah, I think now that we know a little bit more about it and know how to be safe, it's easier to not, like, you don't have to completely stop everything you do with your life.
Like,
but you have to be really smart and just know what you're doing.
Yeah, so I haven't actually came into contact with anybody that has had it, but I've had people around me come in contact with other people, which has been shocking that I don't think I've truly gotten it. But, knock on wood.
Bing bong.
So I've been just incredibly lucky, to be honest, but like when I go out to eat, because I still like to support local businesses, and I do like to go to bars and drink. I just try and go to a big wide open area to go to a bar. So like, I don't like to go places that are packed. So if I drive up and that bar is packed, I'm like, nope. I don't like going to places that are cramped. So, there's things, it's like, your life doesn't have to completely stop. You can but you still have to be really smart. And, it's hard to change your worldview. Like, it just is.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to go next with the whole thing was, not only were we seeing all of this unfold in front of us, but, I mean, especially for the first, month to 2 months, pretty much everyone who wasn't either, a healthcare worker or working at, a grocery store, or any of the truly essential businesses at the beginning, we were all just seeing this happen while we're at home. And when you're home for that long, it's just, it really does change your perspective on so many things. And so I think that's why it's been it's been traumatic on both just the side of trying to deal with and mitigate the virus, but you also just have all these other issues that have come up from everything, because it's just so different. And when you're not doing your normal day-to-day routine of stuff, it forces you to have to take time and sit down and think about stuff. And some people dealt with it okay, and have done awesome things post-lockdown. And other people, I think it really made a lot of people retreat and go back into more of I don't know how to phrase it, kind of more of a hive mind, or people go back into their really small comfort zones. And the nature of all of this is, in order to really survive, you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone and adapt to what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, because I was declared essential, just adapting, I did really well in it. I think I got all my stuff done. I basically looked at it as end of the day, I have to have is a deadline.
Yeah.
And so if I got what I needed to get done by the end of the day, and then I sent out an update on where I was with everything, then I did good. Doesn't matter how I got there. Doesn't matter what I did. One time I woke up at like 5 a.m. and just started working from there because our VPN access had a lot of trouble with all the new people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'd wake up a little later and then like wake up at like 7:55, come out here, turn on my laptop, turn on the TV, throw on Lord of the Rings, and just start working on stuff. And then noon, I'd take like a 1-2 hour break and then get another 4 hours in after that. So
yeah, I think it's definitely really shown people like just different ways to work through all of this, and yeah, I was home for 6 weeks because I work at Starbucks, barista there. So yeah, we were shut down for a while, so I definitely had a lot of free time. And you know, as much as I like to think now, I've come out of it a lot better than I was, for sure. Like, it's definitely this whole year has changed my thinking on a lot of stuff. But at the time, like, I didn't do super well, and not like that I was sitting home like stressing about stuff or anything like that. But it completely disrupted my routine, which, you know, my routine mostly consisted of just going to work and then kind of figuring out what I want to do at home. My default mode is not do anything.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get into that stuff in our part 2.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I don't want to get too personal and all that, but
we will get personal. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Buddy. So all right, let's go ahead and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Which is gonna be on me. I got the BLM.
Yes. I think that was kind of the next really big kind of world-changing thing that happened this year. I mean, you know, we've been, as a country, we've been dealing with race issues, I mean, since its foundation. I definitely feel like a lot of stuff came to a head this year.
I mean, like, number one, we all witnessed a murder. Like, that's kind of the thing about, we always kind of criticize the internet and how crazy it is, but at the same time, it brought these videos to us. Not that we want to watch murder.
Right.
And I saw another video where it was a kid and some cops shot him in Las Vegas in a hotel. And that shook me to my core.
Yeah. I mean, even that was crazy to see. But and not to discount any of the other like police brutality and murders and anything that's happened before, but this was probably the clearest, most blatant murder of a black man by police that collectively we had all ever seen before, because especially the fact that the video was so long. It wasn't a quick, you know, jumpy camera cut where you can't quite see what's going on and you have no context in it. This is, you just watched a white police officer kneel on a black man's neck for almost 9 minutes. And
the guy was saying, "Get off my neck, I can't breathe." Yeah,
and you had people standing by, you know, pleading with him to get off, and even at, you know, at a certain point, you know, he passed out before, you know, he you know, the guy took his knee off of him, and all they were trying to do was just subdue him to get him in cuffs, which I think he was already cuffed at that point.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing could have gone down so differently, and I think that's really, I mean, that's obviously what sparked this whole thing, is it was just so different than anything we'd seen before, and it really made everyone look at it differently.
Well, and I gotta give a little bit of kudos, because I think a lot of people watched it and like, this is wrong. And I think a lot of people, it opened their eyes to racism. Because, again, a Midwest thing is that we don't take ourselves out of our own view of the world to really understand things. This brought that, the internet brought this to our world.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. And I think I have a lot of friends who stood up and did some really good things. I also had a lot of friends, once the protests started, who sat back down. The thing that pissed me off the most was they said, why can't they protest like Martin Luther King?
Right.
They're not protesting, because they did. They protested, they kneeled down for years before this.
Yeah.
You know, we're told we're disrespecting the flag by the man wearing it as underwear.
Yeah.
But just to go back to it, Martin Luther King was shot.
Yeah.
He was shot and killed. And they attacked their protests. They did all these things. And so that's why they're not, you know, that's why these protests are happening. The protests are the voice of, you know, the riots are the voice of the unheard.
So many people stopped caring or stopped really focusing on the issue after the protests really kicked into gear is because we've been collectively taught a super whitewashed version I mean, of all of history, but especially the civil rights movement and all of that. Because really, until like 2014, when Ferguson happened and the murder of Eric Garner and stuff, I was blind to it as well because I was always taught that, oh, okay, you know, in the 1960s, Martin Luther King led all these great marches and the Civil Rights Act was passed and all these things, and you were taught that, like, okay, that's it, everything's good, everyone's you know, equal and all this stuff, but it really left out a lot of the nuance of everything that's been going on and kicked to the curb all of the, I guess I'll call it just like silent racism that's been going on. So when people say, well, I'm all for stopping racial inequality and all of that stuff, because look at, you know, Martin Luther King did all these things, you're missing a big piece of the puzzle because some of those protests were violent. There was a lot of chaos and political unrest, but we just weren't taught it. And when you go back and look at it, it mirrors what's going on right now. Yeah.
So let's do the election. So, okay. Election night, I remember being up till like 4 o'clock in the morning, just watching the election results. They were done. They're not even coming in anymore. They were done, and I just like kept looking, and then just for another 2 weeks. Right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely. I had the Google results on my page, and every day, every hour, I was rechecking. You know, because the swing states changed.
Yeah,
like
crazy. And Georgia and Pennsylvania just like the last second flipped blue.
Yeah, and all of that was surprising to me. You know, like I said, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know what choices the American people were going to make. You know, because I wanted to believe that people were ready to be done with Trump, regardless of whatever their political affiliations were.
I truly don't think he is a Republican, or at least the values.
No, yeah. True. I mean, at least not Republican in the sense of how the Republican Party was before.
With Junior.
But I think that he gave voice to a lot of the fringe aspects of the Republican Party who, you know, the reason people latched onto him so much is because he was so radical and different. The mental mindset of America for so long has mostly been old conservative white people, regardless of kind of wherever they fell in the political spectrum. And so, unfortunately, to make real change, which, you know, I think is why a lot of people went to Joe Biden, is because he's the next step in trying to do it.
Yeah.
My hope is that, you know, we'll eventually kind of get with the program.
So, all right, let's go ahead and move on to celebrity deaths. All right, so celebrity deaths. Kobe Bryant, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Chadwick Boseman, Eddie Van Halen, and John Lewis all died this year.
Who was the last one you said?
John Lewis.
Yeah,
his district is what flipped Georgia.
Yeah. And I said John Lennon at first. I was like,
John Lennon
he died like 30 years ago.
John Lennon died every year for the past 30 years.
His ghost just keeps coming back, getting shot.
Every time
everyone's like, "Oh no, so sad, taken so young."
Chadwick Boseman, speaking of taken so young, definitely was taken young. Kobe Bryant as well. Those were such huge pillars in the black communities. Kobe Bryant, you know, basketball being such a pillar in that community, but Chadwick Boseman being Black Panther, which Black Panther was the very first black superhero in comics. But he also did 42, which is Jackie Robinson, that movie, which first black man in baseball, you know, to be really good and stuff. He did James Brown in that movie. He did so many pillars of the black community, and it's really unfortunate that he died, and he just... Nobody knew. It came out of nowhere. But I remember Kobe Bryant, and it's just basketball fans as a whole were very hurt by that.
Yeah.
I remember my friend Kyle, who was like, man, I cried. Like when I found out he died, I cried. He died in a helicopter crash. I grew up with Kobe Bryant. You know, I didn't grow up with MJ. So, like, I know you're not a big basketball fan, but I love basketball. It's actually, as I've gotten older, my love for basketball has outgrown my love for football. So, I was a big sports fan. So, Kobe Bryant is a big part of that. He was never one of my favorite players, but because F the Lakers. But,
yeah, Lakers.
Yeah, sports, we don't care who knows.
I don't know.
Yeah, so, but the other one would be Ruth Bader Ginsburg, John Lewis, politically, just pillars again. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just a champion for women's rights.
Yeah, just as big of an issue as racism, sexism is still super prominent. And another thing that we were taught that, well, they got the right to vote, 100 years ago, and we're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, and you find out that that's not the
and a lot of our ignorance is because Ruth Bader Ginsburg did so much fighting for women's rights to the point where we didn't really, we didn't know that stuff.
Yeah.
In the Midwest, you don't see that. We're not taught that stuff. You should be taught Ruth Bader Ginsburg in history. And then I guess the last one for us being musically inclined metalheads, I don't really listen to a lot of metal, but Eddie Van Halen passing.
Yeah.
I had Eddie Van Halen shoes growing up, high tops. There his guitar, they had the stripes. Yeah, that's him awesome. Passing. Not probably as big as the other four, but it meant, it was like...
Yeah, I mean, I was never a huge Van Halen fan or anything, but you definitely, I mean, if you took him out of the equation, like, metal music would just be vastly different than it is. Just music in general, because he inspired so many people, and I think you could definitely say he was, like, the first, like, bona fide rock and roll / metal guitar god. There's definitely people before I think Jimi Hendrix was probably like the first that made people go like, wow, you can do crazy things with the guitar.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of been one of those first.
But at the time, especially with Hendrix, the genres weren't quite as like defined as they are now. So I think he's definitely viewed at pretty high up, but I would definitely say for sure, like for rock and metal music, Eddie Van Halen was huge. And even when you just think about the fact that especially me from being a guitar player and recording engineer and stuff like that, like where would modern metal guitar tone be without his PV5150? Like that's a 30-year-old amp and people are still modeling it. People are still buying it. Yeah. He had, once he broke off with PV, he has his own EVH, 5150 now. Like, incredible contribution to rock and metal music because that tone is like modern rock guitar.
Yeah. Yeah. So, rest in peace to all of them. I was thinking we could do a shot for all of them.
Yeah, for sure. And then maybe we can end on a lighter note and maybe talk about some of the positive things that
we're going to talk about some of the advances. So with all the different things that we talked about that went wrong, there's a lot of good things that came out of 2020. It was kind of an up and down year for everybody.
Oh, and our part did this before.
I don't have a chaser. Well,
I had just spilling stuff all over the place.
Ooh, that's going to stay in my mouth forever. All right, so the good things that happened in 2020. SpaceX. Let's start with SpaceX. Because
I still have a little bit of shot left.
You do the shot. So SpaceX is going well. Hopefully they land on the moon again coming soon, and then they can start their ultimate goal of landing on Mars.
Yeah.
And also their rocket. I don't know if you watched their rocket jump, but basically they took off, and then the rocket kind of goes horizontal, and then as it starts falling, and then it flips at the end, and then lands. The rocket blew up. But they're getting closer and closer.
Okay.
The rocket blew up because it ran out of fuel right at the end and then dropped and blew up. But his space jump or his rocket jump the purpose of it is the rocket will go up into the upper atmosphere and then be able to land anywhere on the Earth in 45 minutes.
Dang.
So it's big things coming. And then he's got some other stuff. Him and Spirit partnered with some stuff. pollution is going down. Food waste is going down because of all the stay-at-home orders. People are eating all their food. I'm assuming. Whales and dolphins. I keep reading awesome stories about how whales and dolphins are showing back up into ports.
Awesome.
People are seeing those sightings and stuff, and like you can actually see in the cities. California doesn't have as much smog in the air.
No.
So masks are leading to a low flu and cold season, which is kind of cool. I think I probably will I want to say I'll wear the mask when this is all done and over.
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna be wearing masks for a long time.
I haven't got the flu or the cold yet. I've had allergies out the ass, but
yeah, I've had bad allergies
I don't
all
know
year
if
long,
that's-
which sucks because of like all the different like symptoms you can have of COVID. Every time I
all
get like a bad
allergies.
allergy day, I'm like, oh god, this is it.
all right, and then the last thing, I thought I'd end it with all these different, kind of setbacks in the, minority, with racism and then with sexism. Sarah Fuller, soccer player for Vanderbilt College. They had a COVID issue or an injury issue, I can't remember. They needed to sign a kicker. They signed Sarah Fuller to be their kicker for a couple weeks in football. So she was the place kicker for
Football.
All things considered, football. She was the first female to score a point in a Power 5 football program. So, big things for women.
Yeah.
And I think big things for minorities too as we get closer, as we move forward. But just that needs to be said. I think too many people have laughed at that when I see it on Facebook. Like, for me not to say this now, like it's a big deal.
Yeah.
She just kicked an extra point, sure, but it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It shows that like we're getting closer to that women can do anything that a man can do.
Yeah,
we
which
gotta get to that
even just saying sounds patronizing, but like that's been the mentality of like just society as a whole for so long.
Yeah, I don't mean to patronize. I hope I didn't come across.
No, not at all. I think that's what a lot of like cynics are out there are like people that react to that kind of stuff. Like they're like, oh, big deal, and they're people that think that they understand that it's like, oh yeah, I mean like women can do both things, but like you have to understand in the grand scheme of things, like all these advancements that and opportunities that are happening for women and minorities and all this stuff.
I think there's two types of sexists, just to not get too far into this, but like you got the sexists.
We're already going down the rabbit hole on this.
Sexists who don't think that women can do what men can do, and then there's all that misogyny and stuff that comes with that. There's also a type of sexist where people who think that women can do what men do, but don't think that it's a big deal when women do.
Yeah, they don't deserve the praise.
Yeah, they don't
just because it's like, well, yeah, big deal.
Yeah, there's two types of sexist, and both are just as damaging.
I guess I want to squeeze in one little tiny thing of like positivity. As you see here, we're doing a podcast, and we're trying to do things, all things considered, on Two Beans with an Anus.
I've got the most dangly of anuses.
We had to squeeze in some anuses.
anuses.
But no, I think that's been a huge thing for people being at home. Is like you've seen a lot more small businesses start. You've seen a lot of people being creative, whether it's through podcasting, it's through YouTube. I know a lot of like musicians are hurting because they can't go out and tour, but a lot of people have found really creative ways to stay active. There's been a lot of like live stream concerts that people can, like fans can join in on and watch.
Dance just did a Tree Cities. I didn't watch it, but it's their live stuff, which is really cool. And they did it on YouTube as a subscription. It was kind of cool.
So I love that aspect of it, and I've loved like the few movies that have come out this year, being able to watch like on demand, like when they come out, like Bill and Ted. Like I think Bill and Ted probably did better coming out as a digital release than it probably would have done if it would have just come out in theaters.
Yeah, I think so.
Because a lot more people were like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll sit at home. Especially because that was, other than I think Tenet came out before that. I think that was like the first major release that was gonna say, hey,
Onward was. Onward was like right at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Onward was good, but yeah.
Yeah.
But Bill and Ted like in the middle, we all needed that.
Yeah, so we've gone a little long on this, and we'll edit some stuff down, but I feel like we've unpacked some good things, and feeling good about the flow here.
I hope you guys liked our first podcast.
Yeah.
We are going to have a part 2, and it's going to be our own personal journeys through 2020.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You'll learn a lot about us.
All anus is considered.
All anus is considered. Let me dangle the end. Bye.